Hello everyone and welcome out to Proshow Live, the weekly live podcast where I get to talk about whatever it is I want to talk about, but more importantly, you guys get to call in and voice your own opinions. Talk with me, chat, throw out questions, do whatever. If this is your first time at the show, make sure you have Skype's downloaded and ready, because when I give you the signal, you can add me on Skype, and if I call you, you get to talk on the show. We got two topics this week, a little more laid-back topics. One, we're going to start off with controllers. What makes a good controller? What's your favorite controller? Etc. And then coming back after the break, we're going to discuss collector's editions. So let's get started right away. Controllers. I don't think people really appreciate how important a controller is. And you know when a controller is good when you don't think about it. And that's the best way to really say, like, if it gets to the point where it's just a natural extension of your body and you don't even need to realize where you're pressing a button or where to look or anything like that, that's a good controller. And there are some bad controllers out there. Just for the record, I mean, you know, favorite controllers, everyone's got a different favorite. Personally, my favorite controller of all time has always been the Super Nintendo controller. And I feel like that's kind of validated by the fact that almost all of the controllers of today are pretty much based off of that design. From the 4 face buttons to the triggers to the D-pad off on the left, start and select or whatever in the center. Plus, I also really like the rounded edges. It just fits very natural into your hands, and unlike the NES controller, which I know a lot of people really like the NES controllers, but that thing will hurt your hands. Like if the corners jab in between like your thumb and your palm, it, like jabs in there. I was just playing a bunch of NES today, and like that was one of the first things I started remembering. I also felt like I could snap it in half. The Super Nintendo controller just like has the just right amount of push, and I think the D-pad on it is absolutely excellent. So when it came to like fighters on Super Nintendo, I would play them on Super Nintendo because I'd use the D-pad, and I was really good with it. Examples of bad controllers. Well, we could kind of cheat and say something like the Jaguar, because there's nothing good about that. If that's the one that's got the keypad, like the number keypad, like you'd see on an old phone, those were buttons. Those were just... I don't know if you've ever actually held one, but you're basically holding like a box, a slightly rounded box, and it's just like a couple of, like 3 buttons and then a bunch of number keypads that you don't even use. Other bad controller examples, Nintendo 64. I know a lot of people love that controller, but if you really look at it, it's not a good controller. That thing was so alienating that anyone who first picked it up just got immediately confused, because naturally they would want to put their hand onto the D-pad. But then they couldn't reach the Z button on the back. And then, like, kind of going back to it in the standard style that they wanted you to hold it in, where you got your left hand on the center trident part and your right hand over by the buttons. Man, it's so unnatural to hold a controller, because your hands are much closer together than you realize. I think it worked easier when I was a kid because my hands were smaller and I didn't feel as clustered just trying to like grasp this thing. But I did have the analog stick, which was important, even though that thing like rubs off and like practically disintegrates as you play it. Another controller I always feel like gets a lot of unnecessary hate was the GameCube controller. I really liked the GameCube controller. From the button setup to the placement of the sticks, I thought the GameCube controller was excellent. Not that it didn't have its problems. The D-pad, for one, is awful because it's tiny and you can barely use it. The L and R buttons required a little too much push to get that click in there. But I loved it. From holding like with the A button, just was very natural to hit any Y, X, or B. It was very natural to get to either one of those. It was really easy to me, and I just really got on top of the GameCube controller, no problem. Plus, there was the GameCube that pioneered wireless controllers, which that was at E3 2003, 2002, I forget which. They're showing off Super Mario Sunshine on stage, and it was being played by someone unknown. And then Shigeru Miyamoto walks from the back room with Wavebird, and dude, that blew people away. Like, you have no idea how cool that was. Like a wireless controller that actually worked. It wasn't from infrared or whatever. So the Wavebird was absolutely amazing, and because of that, it made it like the standard. If you don't feel like controllers are that important, let me throw this at you. The original Xbox. The Duke. The original Xbox controller was atrocious. Because it was huge. Like, it was this abomination, this unwieldy thing. From, like, its oval-shaped black and white buttons to, like, the, like, fat A, B, X, and Y buttons, and they're just bad triggers, and it was just so massive. Nothing about it was comfortable. And then Microsoft knew they messed up, which is why they made another controller, the S-Type, which quickly became the only type. And it did a lot better after that. Like, that was a significantly better controller. Another example of someone realizing they had a mistake in their controller. PlayStation 3. They pretty much messed up twice, if you think about it. The first time they messed up is before the PlayStation 3 even came out. Does anyone remember the boomerang? Which I'm sure if I say that, you'll automatically remember that. It was this silver prototype controller, system's not even out yet, and it looked like a boomerang. It was a straight up, huge, arcing controller that was supposed to, I guess, completely change and revolutionize a controller. I have no idea. Maybe at the time they felt like it would look more like a airplane pilot stick or something, so the 6-axis would make more sense. But before people even got their hands on it, they saw that and said, "That is the worst thing I've ever said." And there was such outcry and such rage that Sony said, "Whoops, we should probably change that back." So they changed it back, and then they made just a normal looking PlayStation 3 controller. But they messed up again because it didn't have rumble. That was another thing that became a standard. People wanted force feedback. It may not be as cool now as what it was back in the day, but it was something that people wanted, something that people expected, and not having it in there, people were upset. So Sony fixed it. They made the DualShock 3. Same as the 6-axis, only they brought back the rumble. Plus they put a little bit more weight in there, so it didn't feel like you could toss that little flimsy thing and watch it fly off for 3 miles. So controllers are important. Oh, before I forget, Dreamcast controller. The cord came out the bottom. That's stupid. That just gets in your way. Come on. Really? Really? But those are what I think. I love the Super Nintendo controller. That'll always be my favorite forever. So now I'm going to ask it out to you guys. Get ready to call in, because I'm going to ask for your opinions. Simply go to Skype and add in a brand new contact on the Skype name Proshow Live. That's one word, Proshow Live, Skype contact. Add me on there. And if I call you, you get to talk to me and talk to everyone else on the stream a little bit and voice your own opinions. So what I'm asking is, so what is your favorite controller? What about it makes you love it? Do you have any controllers that you absolutely hate? What do you hate about those controllers? Or are there other controllers out there that you just have these irks about? Anything like that. Those are the things that I want to hear about. Simply call in and let me know. We'll see if we can't get some people in here right away. First up, I'm going to try to call in Morris. You're saying that, hello, Morris?
Hey, what's going on?
Hey, man, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Dallas, actually.
Oh, from Dallas. Well, local.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Alright, so when you Skyped at me, you said that you think console developers are focusing too much using controllers as their style of innovation?
Yeah, I think too many of them are trying to focus on, changing the aesthetics of it, which I understand. You're trying to set yourself apart from other developers, but I think it's a step back if you're, at what cost you're sacrificing quality for, just to set yourself apart. So, I mean, it's a switching cost, sure. It forces you to use their console, because I know people who hate having to switch from one console to another because they have to adapt to, different controllers.
Can you think of some examples?
Well,
your point?
I guess the most appropriate currently would be the PlayStation to the Xbox, because of the analog placement, where in the PlayStation they're parallel, but in the Xbox it's kind of diagonal. And also the naming of the face buttons. When I have people come over and they're more of an Xbox person, I say oh, you just press square. They're like, what's the square button? And they're looking down at the controller, trying to find it. So it's kind of a little awkward at times. Adjusting to new controllers.
Yeah, I can hear that because, like I said, my favorite is the Super Nintendo controller, and the ABXY placement will be forever ingrained into my brain.
Right.
The Xbox controllers, they are literally flipped, and that seriously throws me off.
Well, did you see the new Ouya controller?
I did.
Yeah, it's kind of a mix between the PS3 and the Xbox a little. Don't you agree?
Yeah, it's
The
basically it
placement?
has like the 360 style controller, the stick placements,
Right.
and like the face buttons of the PlayStation, but like with the colors of the Xbox 360.
Right, and I don't have a problem with that. Like, as long as it works fine, because the one thing on a console you can have a diversity of games, so you can choose what you like. But with controllers, you're kind of limited, except to third-party controllers. So you have to make your controller universally appealing and accessible to anyone who wants to play it if you want to sell well.
Now, you also said in your message that controllers are extremely critical for handhelds. What do you mean by that?
Well, obviously, on a handheld, the controller has to be integrated onto the handheld itself. So, like you said, people don't really appreciate how much work goes into controllers. So you have to think about, they also have to make the controller work well, but they also have to integrate it well with what their console looks like. So you could be switching up two different things. You could either be switching up where the controls are, or you can be switching up the console itself, which is a big business decision.
So, do you ever use play any phone games with touchscreen?
Yes, on my
Controls?
iPhone actually. Yeah, it's quite a hassle.
I was never a fan of any of those.
Yeah, I feel like it's so hard to do, and I've seen. I don't know if you've seen, but they have USB USB adapters that create third-party controllers for for the iPhone or whatever. But I mean, if you're gonna go out and shell $50 for an adapter, you might as well just buy a console while you're at it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
All right, man. I really appreciate you listening, and I really appreciate you calling in.
Well, thanks for answering,
Yeah.
or thanks for calling me in.
Yeah.
Actually,
Thank you for your opinions. Have a
All
good
right.
one, man.
you too, man. See ya.
Very cool. Coming up next is a little guy named Nathan McNally. Let's see if we can't get him in right away to talk about his controllers. Hopefully he answers. Hello, Nathan.
Hello.
Hey, man, where are you calling from?
Prince Edward Island, Canada.
I get a lot of Canada callers all the time. Not complaining. All right, man. So, all right, controllers. So, what do you got to say?
I think that when it comes to controllers, simplicity is really the key. You don't want to have the Dreamcast controller was all over the place. There was this big wide space in the middle, and all it's stuff like the Dreamcast controller and the N64 controller. They're all just shaped weird. But then there's controllers. I know that these days you need more buttons than just the NES controller, but an NES controller is a good example. It's just a square controller. It fits very, very comfortably in your hands. Same with the SNES controller. But comfort is really the key, because if you aren't comfortable playing your game, you aren't going to be focused on the game. You're going to be focused on, oh, shit, this controller. I can't fucking play really well with this controller, because it keeps interfering with the game, yeah.
So, you mentioned the Dreamcast controller specifically. Would you say that's one of the controllers that you dislike the most?
Yeah. If I had enough time, if I didn't own a Dreamcast growing up, I actually never had a console other than a Nintendo console until recently when I got a 360.
Okay.
And the N64 controller at first was a really, really hard controller to use because it was so strange shaped. It was like a trident.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, but now it's it seems what's wrong with the N64 controller? To me, that it just feels extremely easy to use. But I can't get used to the Dreamcast controller because it feels like an N64 controller that's just spread out. And it's like a big square. It kind of I I don't know. To many it may seem like a good controller, but I don't know. It just didn't do it for me.
Yeah, it is a little unwieldy, a little bit. Plus, I hate the D-pad on there. Cause like I really wanted to play like Marvel vs. Capcom 2 came out for the Dreamcast first, and dude, that D-pad would just rub my thumb completely dry.
Yeah.
Like, it would just destroy your thumbs, especially if you're playing Marvel vs. Capcom 2 where you gotta move all over the place and just having those triggers, which they're okay, but they're a little,
Yeah.
The sensitivity on them is completely different from any other controller.
Yeah, I was like that. If there's any complaint I had with the N64 controller right now, it's the control stick, because the control stick is extremely uncomfortable. And I think the most infamous example is like if you're playing Mario Party and there's a game that requires you to spin it. Of course, you're going to wear down the skin in your hand while spinning it. Yeah, it's just horrible to use.
Oh yeah, it's well known that thing will just completely deteriorate as you play.
Yeah, completely.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate you calling in. I'm going to move on, but thank you for listening and thank you for calling.
All right, see you later, man.
Yeah, have a good one.
You too.
Another person out there who doesn't quite love the Dreamcast controller. Not that it was terrible, but, it had its fair share of problems. But also innovations. We'll get to that later. Hello, Andy.
Hello.
Hey, man, where are you calling from?
You picked another Canadian, Alberta, Canada.
Well, all right. So, favorite controllers, least favorite controllers, what do you have?
This is very different from some of the people out there, but I'm a very big Nintendo person. I really like the feel of the NES controller, personally.
Yeah?
Yeah, like, just because there's very few buttons on there, so it's very hard to screw it up. But despite its, box-like shape, the buttons, just the feel of the buttons in general, I love that feeling.
See, I always really liked the NES controller, too, because, again, I grew up with that, but, it's very boxy shaped. To me, always got a little uncomfortable from extended play.
Right. So, and I was never one to play the NES for a long period of time. I'm a very young gamer. The NES came out years before I was born, so...
So if that's your favorite one, which one, do you hate or can't stand?
Coming from, unfortunately, my favorite system of all time is the N64. It's a very... Well, it's just a very bad controller in general. You're expected to have 3 hands for the thing. And it just kind of sucks. As far as... I love Mario Party, but that control stick just...
Yep.
Boy.
And that's not to say that the N64 didn't do revolutionary things. I mean, the stick was... that thing, pretty much changed gaming.
Yeah, it's...
And did it right. I mean, I know, the Sega Saturn controller with Knights had, the stick on there first, but the 64 one's the one who really nailed it.
Yeah, no kidding.
Plus, the C buttons was just a billion more buttons that I didn't really need.
Yeah, but, for some games, they're totally necessary, Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. How else were you going to apply your buttons in there, right?
Well, again, that's because the games were designed for that controller, whereas a game that would be on both systems, I don't think any one of them used the C buttons properly. My first thought was Mortal Kombat.
Right.
Because I had Mortal Kombat Trilogy is one of the games I had with the launch at N64, and your attack buttons were B, A, up C, and right C.
Right.
So, you skip over 2 buttons to get to the other ones. In the middle, and, left C and down C were, block and run, which was weird.
Yeah, that's definitely immensely awkward.
Yep. Are there controllers that you would like to play or haven't played, or...
Well,
any other
I said,
preferences?
I'm a huge Nintendo person. I'm not really much to do Microsoft or anything like that, but I have to say one of the best feelings controllers I've ever had is the Xbox 360. It's just... Especially the triggers, those are just something that... It's just such smooth, back and forth. You definitely know when it's activated and when it's not. I know some controllers can have a lot of issues with that, about when it's working and when it's not. But the one thing that I don't like about it is, like you said, the reversed. I'm also used to SNES with the A, B, X, and Y buttons, the order of that, but the order of the X being, the same order issue as well, so...
Absolutely. All right, man. Thank you for calling in. I really appreciate it. And thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks, Jared.
Yeah, have a good one.
Thanks, you too.
Coming up next is, I believe his name is Augustin? I'll say Augustin. And his favorite controller is one that hasn't been said yet, so I'd like to hear from him. Hopefully we can get him in here. Hello?
Whoa.
Hello?
Hey.
Hey, how do you pronounce your name? Augustin?
It goes by many names. It's Augustin.
Augustin?
Augustin would be fine.
Okay, we'll go with Augustin. Now, you
Yeah.
said that your favorite controller was the Mega Drive / Genesis.
Yeah. Well, my first controller was the Sega Genesis controller because it was the first game system I had. I didn't even know what a Nintendo was at the time. I grew up pretty sheltered. I just loved the way it felt in my hand and the 3 buttons, and I also had the 6-button pad. I didn't even know what those other 6 buttons were for, 'cause I didn't play fighters. I just really love playing any type of game. I just pop it in, see what each button does, and I felt like certain games utilize the buttons pretty well by making them each do different things, and it's just easy to switch over to each one. The D-pad felt pretty nice too.
So growing up with the Genesis, you kind of naturally
Yeah.
lean more towards the Genesis controller. Okay, important question then. Which do you like more, the 3-button or the 6-button controller? Because they're very different.
I would say 3-button because I played with it more, and I also had a turbo, so playing certain things were pretty fun with it.
See, I actually kind of agree with that. Even though, like, the 6-button controller is obviously more useful, to me, it didn't feel as good as the 3-button controller. Aside from just, like, the shell of the whole controller as a whole, like, having it in your hands, and then just, like, the feel of the buttons and pressing it down. Just, to me, that felt nicer than the 6-button controller on the Genesis. So even though, like, that one was more useful, I preferred the 3-button controller.
Yeah, that sounds correct. Yeah. I also like the Dreamcast because when I first got the Dreamcast, I was kind of shocked at the controller, how it was so wide, but depending on what game I played, it just felt so natural. Like, the first game I played was Sonic Adventure through the demo, and the only game that really I felt utilized all the buttons were kind of was Space Channel 5, which I
Yes.
kind of played a bit, and it made me use each button, made me experience what each button will do, and just, the D-pad does suck, but that's something I just forgot about, actually. I imagine the Dreamcast without it, so that's kind of funny. And I also love the memory card attachment that allows you to actually play a separate, and I felt like that played like a Tamagotchi. I had
Yeah,
those too.
the Dreamcast VMU was one of the coolest and most underutilized things that the Dreamcast had going for it. And unfortunately, that's one of the reasons why you ended up having such a huge box of controller, was trying to get that thing to fit in there.
Yeah. I didn't even know what it did. I just played in the game. I didn't even know, and then I looked down at my controller and I see the Sonic's head, and I'm like, oh, this is so cool.
All right, cool, man. Thanks for calling in. I appreciate it.
Have
a good one.
It too. Have a good one.
All right, up next is someone who we're just going to have, I guess we could say, a little more dissenting opinion compared to what other people have said before. Hello, Elijah.
Hey,
Hey, man, where are you calling from?
Maine.
From Maine. Okay. Now, your message to me on Skype says you want to talk about the N64 and the PlayStation 2 controllers and why you think they both suck?
Yeah.
Elaborate.
Well, obviously there's been a lot of talk about the N64 controller, but something that hasn't really been mentioned about it was when I was a younger gamer, that was the first controller I ever experienced playing games with. So of course I grasped it very easily. Now, my dad, on the other hand, not a gamer, so when we'd play games together, he would try to grab both the left side and the middle side with his left hand, which I think is the appropriate thing you want to do when you first see it, but it doesn't really work.
Mm-hmm. And that's one of the problems I had with the N64 controller, because unless you're there and you know how to use it, it's very alienating. Like people who, like you see at that point, all people had really seen was like the Nintendo and Super Nintendo controller, and that's easy to grasp. Like you get that, like you know how it works, you know where your hands go. But you throw in like a third placement for your hand, and people just get confused.
Right.
So I have to ask, how do you think the PlayStation 2 controller sucks?
This is probably mostly for me, but my hands are really big. I'm a really tall guy, so my hands don't fit the controller right. So that when I'm grabbing the R1 button, my middle finger can't get to the R2 button as well, and my hand it just feels floaty around the whole thing. So I don't like playing PlayStation 2 games, and it's the same problem I have with the PS3 as well.
I'd imagine all the controllers, since they're all pretty similar by now.
Yeah, the controller I really haven't had any problem with is the Xbox controller that was redesigned.
On the original Xbox?
Yeah, the S-type controller.
Okay.
Because let's not even talk about the real first controller about the Xbox. But yeah, I don't know what it is about the PS2 controller. It just doesn't work with my hands. Maybe it's not my big hands. Maybe it's just the way they're shaped. I don't know.
Or it could just be because of your giant, massive hands.
Right.
That's fine. That's understandable. And there are companies out there who make separate controllers that are laid out different, that are easier to press because of the different placements. Like Pelican made like a different PS2 controller where the R2 and L2 buttons were like indented, so it's a little more natural to put your middle fingers on there while also having your forefingers on the L1 and R1.
Right.
So like it's impossible to have a controller that fits everyone, and is something as like universally accepted as a PlayStation 2 controller, that obviously attributes to you,
right,
and your cause. Huh. Well, that's fascinating. I didn't even think about that, but I appreciate that viewpoint. Thanks for calling in, man.
No problem. Thanks for.
Yeah, I really like it. Have a good one.
You too.
A couple more things I want to say before we move on into the next subject. I will say that the type of controller, and depending what game's on it, does make a difference in what I personally will choose to play the games on. For example, when it comes to first-person shooters, I will most likely get it on Xbox 360 before I get it on PlayStation 3 for two reasons. One is the controller stick placement, because to me that is more natural to get your thumbs off to the side like that instead of having both in the center. And the triggers. The triggers just feel a lot more natural than the PlayStation 3 controllers. And I see a lot of people putting this out in the chat, and I don't want people to forget about it either, but the keyboard and mouse, fantastic controller, if you want to call it that. More like accessories that work really well together. I mean, I've got the PC gaming callus right on that wrist of your right hand. You know what I'm talking about, where you set that fulcrum for your mouse hand, you move it all around. Plus, with how customizable it is, you can make the keyboard work in any way you want it to. And that kind of customization really doesn't come from consoles. Alright, everyone. We're going to take a brief break, listen to some music, and then we're going to come right back with our next subject, which is going to be collector's editions. Thank you very much for watching Proshow Live. We'll be right back. That was the man with the machine gun from Project Majestic Mix from OCRemix.com. Hello everyone, welcome back to Proshow Live. I am your host, Projared. Coming up next, we're going on into our second topic tonight, and that's collector's editions. And these collector's editions, you know what they are. You know what I'm talking about. It's those different packages of or special editions of the game that usually cost $10 to $20 more. They get a bunch of stupid crap for paying extra. And I was looking at my shelf, and I used to buy collector's editions pretty frequently, but I really don't do that anymore. Like, looking over right now, I see I've got the collector's edition for Resident Evil 5, Bioshock, frickin' Street Fighter 4, of all things. Those weren't worth it. And it got me thinking and questioning, why do people buy collector's editions? What's inside of them that entices people to want to buy them? Does it have to be a physical item that you have with you that you can put up onto your shelf and show off? Or does it have to be something in-game, like you buy a collector's edition, you get bonus experience, or extra items, or gold-plated guns, or frickin' whatever? You know what I mean. Or do you have other reasons for purchasing a collector's edition? For example, there are people out there who will buy collector's editions simply to support the developer and publisher. For example, I'm a huge fan of Dead Rising. Love Dead Rising. So when Dead Rising 2 was coming out, the collector's edition was stupid. Like, it doesn't come with anything cool. I think the cool thing it came with is like a plastic syringe. That's dumb. But you know what? I bought it. Because, to me, that was me telling Capcom that I'm a big enough fan of this franchise and this IP that I will pay a little bit extra so that you guys know that this is a franchise worth keeping around. But at the same time, it's because of collector's editions that we're paying just for as much as we are now for games. Let's go back in time a little bit. The first collector's edition that you can think of that's very similar to what you're seeing now, the way they do it, where it comes like with a tin case and behind-the-scenes crap and blah, 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 blah. The first game to kind of do that was Ubisoft's Splinter Cell Chaos Theory. At the time, no one had really done anything really like that, save for maybe like Halo 2. And it was this collector's edition of the game, had the tin case, and all this other extra stupid crap on there, had like a sleeve you could put on top that like had like this cool blood effect, or whatever. And what that was, it was game companies testing the waters. They were seeing, people are paying $50 for games right now. Would they be willing to pay $60? And you know what? A crap ton of people did. So a lot of people bought the collector's editions or limited editions of Splinter Cell, of Halo 2. And then the Xbox 360 came out, and suddenly games cost $60. So we got suckered into that. Hopefully that doesn't happen with the next generation of consoles, which is coming. I don't think it will, but it's coming. So I just want to throw that out there. But again, doesn't matter what I think. What's more important is what you guys think. What makes you buy a collector's edition? Get ready for me to call you. Go to Skype right now and add in Proshow Live. Go to Skype, new contact, Skype name, Proshow Live, one word, and if I call you, we'll get you on the air. And what I want to know is, what makes you choose to buy a collector's edition? What makes you not want to buy a collector's edition? Physical items? In-game items? For the support? Or if you see something that you don't think it's worth your time, you don't buy. That's what I kind of want to know. So let's see if we can hear from you guys about it. See if we can't get Chris Ashforth in here right away. Talking collector's editions right now. Hello, Chris.
Hi, what's up?
Hey, man, where are you calling from?
Newcastle, England.
Oh, from across the pond.
Hi.
So, collector's editions. Yay or nay?
Kind of both. I buy, like, all my games, like, later than they come out. I'm always, like, behind the trend. So I don't really buy my collector's editions if, like, they're really, really worth it.
Huh, so you never really, like, try to, like, pre-order one so you can get it on day one? You always kind of get the games later?
Yeah, unless I really, really care about the game, I generally just wait a few months.
Has there been a game that you really cared about that made you want to get the collector's edition right away?
Mass Effect 3 was pretty much the last one, I think.
Mass Effect 3? Alright.
Yeah.
Understandable.
Yeah.
So,
I think I kind of waste my money there.
Yeah, so as someone who really kind of waits for the release, and I guess waits until the price drops down, like, these collector's editions pretty much mean nothing to you then, huh?
Not really, no. I think before Mass Effect, the last collector's edition I bought was Battlefield 3 because it was the same price as the normal edition. So I was like, what the hell? I mean, I might as well.
See, I do think those are good. Where, like, you get, like, a limited edition or whatever for, like, no extra cost. Like, you say you pre-order a whatever game, and then you get a bonus edition or collector's edition for the same cost. Those are great.
Yeah.
I think those are great. Atlas has done a very excellent job of doing things like that, where all you get are bonuses for promising to them that you're going to buy the game.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm a big fan of it.
Yeah, so you also asked if, on your Skype call, on a little message saying, do I count Game of the Year editions as collector's editions? I do not. I think they're on their own kind of like separate release. Because all it is like just taking the same game and like throwing in the DLC to there. It's not like and it's usually a cheaper price than when the original game came out. It's not like a $70 to $80 box that comes with a crappy figure that's going to break, a season pass for DLC, and behind-the-scenes DVD that's extremely boring or lackluster. So no, I don't think Game of the Year editions are collector's editions. Game of the Year editions are Game of the Year editions.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's my opinion on that. All right, well, cool, man. I appreciate you calling in.
Okay,
And thank you for listening and staying up. Appreciate it.
Alright, cheers, mate.
Yeah, have a good one.
Yeah.
Let's keep the call train right on rolling. Coming up, we got Dan. Let's see if we can get him in here.
Hello?
Hello, Dan.
Yes.
Hey, man. Where are you calling from?
Corona, California?
From California. All right, I'm getting a little bit of feedback. Can you turn down the Skype volume?
Actually, let me get my mic.
That would be great. I'm going to give him 20 seconds to get his mic. Otherwise, I have to come back to him, because I do have a show to run. And I can't...
Hello?
Oh, much better.
Okay.
All right. So, collector's editions, Dan. Where do you stand?
I
inside
sometimes get them. My first Xbox game actually was Halo 2 Limited Collector's Edition, so I kind of have a history with them.
Okay.
And the last Collector's Edition game I got was Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City. I mostly got it for the patches, though. You know, it was only $10 more. So
you essentially paid $10 to get the patches.
yeah.
Let me ask you this. Do you think it was worth it?
Well, I don't know. I kind of think it was, because I just put on my jacket and everyone's like, oh, is that from Resident Evil? And yeah, it is. Kind of got slightly more popular at school. Not really.
So, the Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City Collection Edition, you got that because it had a physical item in there that you wanted.
Yes.
Have you ever gotten other So is that something you really look for in your collector's edition? Something like something physical that you could have?
Yeah, I'd rather have physical than something digital like a gun skin.
Huh? Really? So when you look, what kind of physical things do you look for then? Like figurines or?
Usually things with figurines are out of my price range, so I don't really buy collector's editions all too much. But yeah, I do look for physical items.
What other collector's editions have you gotten?
I have the Dead Space 2 collector's edition.
What came in that?
It came with like a plasma cutter and some free DLC.
Oh, that's right, the plasma cutter. Is that
Yeah.
the thing that like you hit the trigger and it lights up?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was just lights though.
Yeah. So, did you buy that because you just wanted that little plasma cutter?
Yeah, the plasma cutter was interesting, and you know, I could show it off to my friends and say I'm cooler than you now.
Nothing wrong with that. So you do prefer the actual physical stuff over
Yes,
the
I do.
digital. So has there ever been a collector's edition that had a digital item that made you want to get it just for the digital thing? Like, has that ever enticed you?
No, not really, but I am
Huh.
kind of interested in the Halo 4 collector's edition, just because I don't know. I kind of support, support 343 Studios, but I really don't know. It's mostly physical for me.
Well, all right then. Cool, man. Thank you for your opinion, and thank you for calling in. I really appreciate that.
No problem.
Yeah, have
Thank
a good
you
one, dude.
for Thank you for letting me on.
Absolutely. So that's someone who actually does prefer the physical items, and it's always the extra stuff, not necessarily the statues or the DVDs that typically come with this. Coming up, I want to get Andrew in here, who says he's actually the opposite of Dan, who we just talked to. Let's see if we can talk to Andrew about his opinions here.
Hello.
Hello, Andrew.
Hey, hi, Garrett. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. Where are you calling from?
Baja California, Mexico.
Oh, cool, dude. So, now, on your Skype message, you said you actually prefer the in-game stuff when it comes to your limited editions.
Yeah, I actually do. I usually don't buy collector's edition because I've had really bad experiences with them. But for
really?
this, yeah, really bad.
What kind of bad experience have you had?
There was a game called Ion. It was an MMO that I bought a long time ago. And basically it cost like $100, and the game was so bad. It's just one of those things you regret after you buy it, but you can't do anything about it, and you're like, damn, why did I get that collector's edition?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right.
And,
So, so you're saying you prefer digital over physical. So what kind of things do you look for then?
I appreciate, art and something that maybe I could put in a wall or something, but in reality, what I want is something that's gonna affect me in game or maybe put me apart from the rest of the players. Currently, the only one that I wish I could get is one for Guild Wars 2, because I actually like the art and everything about it.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, I think collector edition is just a cheap way to lure people in to put a lot of money up.
Oh yeah, it is. So, have there been like collector's editions in the past that you have skipped over because it didn't have anything in there that you deemed worthy of your extra money?
Wow. No, actually, no. I haven't really bought it. When I look at a collector edition and I say, I really want that, I usually put the money up. But I haven't really passed on anything that I really wanted. Unless the only, I guess the only incentive is a statue that I'll probably end up throwing in the trash in a year when I find it somewhere, thrown around. So that's pretty much. Yep.
So when you say you prefer the digital stuff, do you like the stuff that, like you said, makes you stand out by like having different colors, like a different skin or a different accessory on your character, or do you like the stuff that gives you like a tangible bonus, like the Call of Duty limited editions that give you like an experience bonus for so long?
Yeah, I think the bonus would be more. I would like a bonus more than something that's just gonna make me look shiny and look nice. But I know that a lot of people really like that kind of stuff. Like to have something that looks different for anyone else. So yeah, I think I would go for the bonus, something that's gonna really affect the game.
Stuff that would give you an actual bonus for spending your extra money.
Yeah.
Have you ever bought a collector's edition simply out of support for the publisher or developer? Or you look specifically for those bonuses?
Not a game, but I actually bought the collector edition console for Resident Evil 5, I believe.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was red. It looked so nice.
Yep.
Yeah, me and my cousin said, "Hey, let's go half and half for this one. It looks really good." And I actually don't. I don't regret that. I like that game a lot, and I thought it was cool.
So you got that just because you're a huge Resident Evil fan? You're
I really like
Resident
Resident
5?
Evil.
Oh,
I don't like
alright.
where it's going usually, but right now, it was really good. I don't regret that one at all.
Well, very cool.
All right.
All right, man. Thank you very much for calling in. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for listening, too. Have a good one.
Bye.
So there's someone who says I actually do prefer the in-game stuff over the physical. I always like seeing the kind of different opinions like this. Let's see if we can't get at least one more person in here. Coming up next, we got, I believe his name is Jonathan. See if we can get him in here and talk to him a little bit. Hello, Jonathan.
Hello, hello.
Hello, where are you calling from?
Lansing, Michigan. I gotta fix this for a second. There. I was getting some weird feedback.
All right. Now, you said you like collection editions if the bonuses are practical?
Yeah, practical like the Zelda one, where like I didn't have the Wii Motion Plus, so it made sense to get that. Or yeah, stuff like that in general. Just like with the N64, I'm not sure if there was a version of Donkey Kong 64 that didn't come with the expansion pack, or whatever it's called. But it's stuff like that where, all right, I need to play the game. I don't have it, so I might as well get the collector's edition or the special edition.
That makes sense. I don't know if I would really call those collector's editions. That's kind of like a gray area there. Like the Donkey Kong one, I don't know if I would call it a collector's edition so much as a prerequisite edition. Like you said, where you actually need like the expansion pack to play the game, or even if they did, or even for like Majora's Mask. I did get the Legend of Zelda bundle that came with the Wii Motion Plus because I didn't have a Wii Motion Plus yet, and basically for the same price of buying like the little add-on separately, I got a sweet ass gold Wii remote.
Exactly. And then there's also not just practical with being able to play the games. There's also the practical in Kid Icarus. I never got the NES game, and so getting the special edition or the pre-order of Kid Icarus Uprising, where I got the 3D version of the NES game for free, that's just a win. There's no reason.
Right.
So, but besides that, when it comes to like art or figurines, I don't really care about that stuff because I don't really have a lot of room at my place to put it anyways. You know, I regret not getting the art book for Rayman Origins because it was just so beautiful. But
Oh yes.
besides that, I really don't care. To be honest.
So like you like the limited editions or collection editions if it comes with something that you can like actually use.
Exactly.
And that makes sense. Like even the kind of piggybacking off the Kid Icarus, it came with that bundle where it had like a nice little stand on there, allowing you to actually like have a place to set it and play on there.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, are there any other like collection editions that you like of a game? Like you thought there's a game you really liked that was coming out. Was there a collector's edition that you didn't buy because it didn't have anything in there that you felt like would benefit you?
Like Rayman Origins, that would be the one that really stands out for me. There are some games where besides that, there's games where I might want it, but I'm not sure if I want the game. That's what usually happens is the game's not tempting enough to pre-order it, and then after I actually play the game, I wish that I got the collector's edition.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And it's always maybe a little bit safer to kind of be that way instead of blindly buying a collector's edition. Plus, I just thought of this. One of the problems I have with collector's editions is that they're barely collectors anymore.
Yeah,
because like they mass produce so many of them. I mean, especially for some of the bigger games like the Call of Duty collector's editions. That doesn't mean anything.
No.
Whereas like a collector's edition for an Atlas game or Xseed game, they don't make a whole lot of those. Like those are actually like collector's items. Those are hard to find.
one thing that was pointed out in the chat was the golden cartridges for the old Zelda games. Now you don't pay extra for them, but
Yeah, those were like this first run cartridges, which again was kind of like a bonus for pre-ordering it. As like hey, you're promising to us that you're going to buy our game, so you get a nice little gold cartridge to show that you supported us upfront. Yeah, and those were cool too, which I have those as well.
but then they're also pretty easy to find. I mean, it's easier for me to find the golden like Zelda 2 cartridge than it is to find the gray one, actually.
Yeah, actually, for the original NES, the gray cartridge Zelda games are harder to find than the gold ones, but because the gold ones are gold, people think those are worth more, which is kind of funny. All right, man. Hey, man. Thanks very much for calling in. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, it's good talking to you. Have a good one. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. A little talk about collector's editions, and hopefully that'll get you thinking to yourself, thinking about what about collector's editions makes you want to buy them or stay away from them. And from the previous topic, getting you thinking about your controllers too. What makes you like a different controller? I do want to thank all of my callers who talked with me on the show today. Very cool people, very cool chats today. And of course, very huge thank you to everyone watching too. Again, I do this every week, every Sunday at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. Goes for about an hour, and I really do appreciate it when people come out and watch. I just think that's cool. If you can think of other people who you think would like this kind of show, make sure you tell them about it. That's all I really ask. Just share them so we can get more people in here, so we can get more discussion, more people, more opinions, and that's what I want to hear. Just in case you haven't seen it yet, if you are a fan of Projared and Proshow Live and all that, a brand new pro review did go live last night on YouTube. I will link that in the chat so you guys can watch that too. But until then, I am Projared, and that was Proshow Live. We'll do this again 1 week from now. Thank you guys very much for listening. Until then.